Hi everyone, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be doing a guide for Florence for EU4 1.35 Domination. So Florence is a nation located in the northern half of Italy, and we do start off as one of the richest and most powerful nations in Italy and controlling some of the highest dev provinces anywhere in the world. Florence, of course, is a player favorite nation for playing tall due to their amazing playing tall national ideas, starting off with minus 10% dev discount, plus 2 papal influence, plus 5% discipline as a finisher. Then we got a tech and idea discount, a double idea, a merc maintenance discount, interest per annum minus 0.5, plus 1 yearly prestige, plus 15% trade efficiency, plus 10% production efficiency, and plus 25% national manpower, which is massive. These amazing national ideas paired with the very cool Florentine/Tuscan mission tree and the ability to form Italy later on make Florence one of the most fun and one of the best, if not the best nation for playing tall in EU4. By playing as Florence, you will be dominating the area of Tuscany first, then moving on to expand in northern and southern Italy, and by playing tall, developing your provinces, picking the right idea groups, and building the right buildings, you will become one of the most powerful nations in the world in no time. So sit back and relax and learn how to play as Florence. Alright, here we are as Florence, and of course the first thing we're gonna wanna do is kickstart our mission tree right here by completing the mission Personal Diplomacy and completing the mission the Italian League, which gives us claims on the regions around us that we wanna conquer. And of course our awesome starting ruler Cosimo de' Medici right here, who's a 655, will help us accomplish that very quickly. So the first thing we're gonna do is go ahead and check this right here, and this of course will tell you if the Pope has rivaled you, if you can pass the statute in restraint of appeals. Don't do this, and it's very common that the Pope rivals you at the start of the game as Florence. Don't worry, we should be able to get rid of that rivalry very soon. So first we're gonna go into our estates and summon the Diet. You can pick whichever agenda is best for you. Then we're gonna give the clergy Religious State, Clerical Advisory Council, Religious Diplomats, and Clerical Education. Then we're gonna give the nobility Primacy of the Nobility, Increased Levies, Aristocratic Counselors, and we're gonna give the burghers Land of Commerce, Patronage of the Arts, and Commercial Advisory Board. No indebted to the burghers just yet. We can't have any loans for this mission right here. Then we're gonna seize land. Next, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into our advisors, and we're gonna hire a Diplo advisor. Get a Diplo rep or improve relations level 1 dip advisor. I have both of them actually, so I'm just gonna get this Diplo rep guy. And now we're also gonna focus on dip, just like this. And with that, we can take the first mission right here, Personal Diplomacy, which gives us plus 25% improved relations and plus 1 diplomatic relations. Perfect. Now we're gonna go back into our estates, go into the burghers, and get indebted to the burghers. And now we have some money too. Now we're gonna go back into our advisors and go into the admin advisors, and you'll see that we have a bunch of stability discount guys. Of course, these are all real artists and scientists and mathematicians and whatnot that existed in Florence during this time frame. And all of them are level 2 guys, and all of them are half cost level 2 guys. So just hire the yearly inflation reduction guy. That's what I recommend doing first. And then go into your mill advisors and get a morale, discipline, fort defense, or manpower level 1 mill advisor. I don't have any of those guys as a level 1 guy, so I'm just gonna get this land maintenance guy. And that's your advisor setup done. We're not gonna be rivaling any nations just yet. More on that later. Now it's time for some alliances, and of course as an Italian nation we will have the ability to ally both France and Austria without one of them probably breaking their alliance with us. And of course for this mission right here we also need to have 2 Italian allies. So what I recommend doing first is that you royal marry Austria. You will be able to do this right off the bat, and there we go, we have a Diplo relation locked in, and with just a little bit of improving relations with them we'll be able to ally them as well. And next, with this other free diplomat, I recommend that you ally Milan. Milan is going to be a nation that's going to help you out a bit with your conquests over in Italy, so go ahead and ally them. Now, we're also going to take our boats right here and tell this one light ship to go ahead and protect trade in Genoa and go home during war. And we're also going to go ahead and hire the free company in whichever province you want. Now, we're going to lower army maintenance and turn off our forts to save some money while we complete the setup. Now, it's time to wait for these diplomats to come back, and I'll tell you what to do with them. Now that the diplomats are back, with one of them, we're going to start spying on Siena. And as you can see right here, very unfortunate RNG in my game, but they've allied Austria. Where am I going with this? The nations that we're going to fight first are Siena, Lucca, Bologna, and Ferrara. The nations that we border and that are easiest to fight. Preferably, it would be the best that you fight Siena first, because if you take the province of Siena, you can spy on Naples, get a claim on Naples, and then fight Naples once they break free from Aragon. So ideally, in the most perfect scenario, for your first war it'd be Siena, and for your second war it'd be Naples. But as we can see in my case right here, they've already gone ahead and allied Austria, which means obviously that won't be my first war, which is super unfortunate. Either way though, I am gonna start spying on Siena for the purposes of this guide, and that's the nation that you should spy on first as well. Of course, if you can't fight Siena like me, me, you're gonna fight Luca, Bologna, or Ferrara, or someone else like that. And then with this other free diplomat right here, we're gonna go ahead and ally another Italian nation. It really doesn't matter which one, unless it's the Pope. So if you can ally the Pope, then definitely do it. But if it's not the Pope, ally whoever else. I'm just gonna do Saluzzo right here. And now that we can take this mission, I'm gonna break that alliance once a month passes. And there we go. Once you take the mission, the Italian League, by having 2 Italian allies, you'll get claims on these areas right here. Once this diplomat is back, you should start improving relations with Austria in order to lock in that alliance. Additionally, if the Pope has rivaled you, like it is the case in my game, make sure to go ahead and buy indulgence for your sins. And there we go, Austria actually just sent me an alliance offer, which is perfect. Now I can stop improving with them, and I can break my alliance with Saluzzo, and I can start improving relations with France, or actually even ally them right off the bat. Like I said, as an Italian nation, we can ally both of these guys. If one of them threatens to break their alliance with you, however, you should keep your alliance with Austria and break it with France. In the early game, the first 20 to 30 years, it's better to be allied to Austria. But either way, there's my alliance with France. And like I said, now that we've taken that mission, I'm gonna dissolve my alliance with Saluzzo. Ideally, your allies would be Austria, France, Milan, and the Pope. If you can't get the Pope like me, don't worry, it's not a big deal. After we get the alliances sorted, now we can go ahead and set some rivals. And I'm gonna rival Siena, Bologna, and Lucca. Ideally, you'd rival nations that you want to fight first, like these guys right here. Now, you may be wondering why we're spying on Siena if we got claims on them, and that's because we will want to get that siege done a little bit faster. The spy network helps with that, but of course, if you're not planning on fighting Siena first, like in my case, because they're allied to Austria, well then, you should just go ahead and spy on whoever you plan to fight first. And let me take a look at that in my game, since I can't fight them. Lucca is allied to the Pope, Bologna is allied to the Pope, Ferrara is allied to Aragon and guaranteed by Milan, so it's gonna have to be one of these two guys in my game. So I'm just gonna start spying on Lucca right here. I think I'm gonna fight them first. And with this other diplomat, I'll curry favors with Milan, since I plan on calling them into this war. If you've managed to ally France immediately and they call you into the England war, definitely accept. Another way you may be able to ally them is right during this war. And even if they're in this war and you ally them, they'll still call you in. Go ahead and join. This doesn't interfere with our plans. Of course, if you do have the ability to fight Siena in your game, declare on them immediately, as soon as you can. And then while you're in that war with Siena, start spying on Naples so we can get a claim on Naples. And once 2 or 3 years have passed and after you've curried favors with Milan to help you out in some of your wars, if you need them of course, it is time to start your first war. Like I said, ideally Siena, in my case not. So before you fight any one of your 4 neighbors right here, just take your army and attach the Free Company to your main army, and take your main army and recruit a general. There we go. And now it's time to start our first war. I'm gonna do it versus Lucca right here. And there we go, conquest of Lucca, and I'm gonna call in Milan simply because I have to fight the Pope as well. And there we go, there's your first war started, versus one of these 4 guys, ideally Siena. And right about this time is when the Neapolitan succession happens, where basically Naples becomes free. Ideally by this point, you'd have Siena and you'd pounce on Naples immediately before they can get any allies. That's the best opening scenario. Hopefully, you had more luck than me with that. And there we go, now that me and Milan have pieced out the Pope for some money and war reps, it is time to wrap up my war, and whoever you're fighting in your first war, it doesn't matter which of these 4 nations it is, you're gonna go ahead and full annex them and take all of their money. Keep in mind, these are high dev provinces, all of them, and we will gain quite a bit of aggressive expansion. As we can see, it's 22 over here. If I take Lucca, it has 15 dev, so be careful in your next wars. However, in your first war, full annex whoever you're fighting. And that's your first war done. If it was versus Siena, now is the time to immediately strike on Naples. If it's not, it's time to look for someone else to fight. And if you can't fight Naples, your second war is still gonna be versus the initial nations that I mentioned, unless you fought Ferrara, in which case you can try fighting Mantua as well, if you've gotten a border with them. Either way, it's time to chill a little bit until we core everything up. In the first 15 to 20 years of the game, while we're not making that much money from trade, you can rearrange your merchants a bit and tell them to establish communities. As you can see at the start, they're transferring from Valencia and Alexandria over to Genoa, but what I recommend doing, at least for now, is putting both of them to collect, one in Genoa and one of them in Venice. And once they're there, I recommend that you tell them to establish communities. This will help us deal with the early game coalitions. Of course, once 1450 hits, the Renaissance will spawn, and if you're lucky enough, you will spawn it yourself. I didn't have that luck in my game. It spawned in Urbino right here. Either way, once it does, you will want to activate Encourage Development in your capital right here. I have Defensive on because I was trying to stop the Pope from sieging me, and you should just develop your capital of Florence twice in whichever category you want to. We want to get it up to 30, and the Renaissance will spread pretty fast either way. Of course, as Florence, we do start off as an Italian Signoria right here, which gives us plus 15% national tax and plus 10 max absolutism. It's a pretty good government reform, but either way, for your tier 2 government reform, I recommend going with Republicanism for plus 0.2 yearly Republican tradition, or or meritocratic rule, mainly for the plus 5% goods produced. Plus 5% goods produced isn't that much, even though it is pretty powerful. You don't need these other ones, and we don't really need the manpower. We'll get it in our national ideas later on, so I do think republicanism is the best out of any of these. If you're planning on blobbing hard and converting stuff to Catholic later on as Italy though, you might consider getting religious values, even though it's not that important for now. Either way, republicanism. Once a little bit of time has passed after your first war, unless you fought Siena, of course, like I said, and you fought Naples for your second one, it is time to move on with your further wars, and if you're not pushing down here, you're still gonna go into one of the following small nations up here. In my case, I'm gonna declare on Bologna right now. They're also allied to the Pope, so I'm also gonna call in Milan once again, and that's my second war started. We're still focusing on this immediate region around us. Once you've embraced the Renaissance, you will be able to take the mission Florentine Renaissance, which gives us +1 yearly prestige and an advisor discount. And if you have high Republican tradition, basically if your starring ruler is still in power, you will be able to reaffirm civic values for 1 stability. And of course, after you embrace the Renaissance, you should go ahead and attempt to sell it to some of your allies. In my case, I can sell it to Austria. That's a little bit of income for us, so why not? When you get Admin Tech 5, of course, it will be time for your first idea group, and we do have different choices compared to the last update with the addition of the new idea groups such as infrastructure and court, and with the changes to the old ones such as economic, innovative, trade, and other idea groups like that. But either way, this is a playing tall campaign. It is Florence, like I said, it's the best nation to play tall with, so of course we're going to be going with every idea group that helps us do that. Innovative, economic, infrastructure, trade, court, Pluto, and other mill idea groups as well. But previously we did open up with innovative ideas, and even though they've been changed, they're still pretty good for playing tall in my opinion. The prestige decay, innovativeness growth are excellent. The -10% tech discount along with the -5% that we already have is going to be super strong. Possible advisors is great because we're going to be running high level advisors very soon, not just level 1 guys. Institution spread is always nice, and the war exhaustion and monthly spender along with the really strong +1 free policies is excellent, and not to mention the -20% advisor discount is going to help us get so much monarch points and develop our nation really fast. Of course, some people think it might not be a good idea to open up with an admin idea group since it will slow you down while in getting to admin deck 7, but with the insane monarch point generation we start off as Florence, that's not really a problem, so I still recommend innovative ideas for your first idea group as Florence. It's pretty much a crime not to do this. Once you get the nobles loyalty at 60 or higher, which I just did by completing an agenda, you will be able to take the mission handpick bureaucrats for some admin points. And if you don't have any corruption, which really you shouldn't, you'll be able to take the mission Immaculate Government for foreign spy detection and diplo rep. And now that my war with Bologna is done, let's see aggressive expansion right here. 13, no risk of a coalition, so I'm gonna go ahead and full annex them. And there we go. Slow but steady expansion in this very high dev region. After you wrap up your second war, even if it's with Naples or not, it's time to chill a little bit until we core everything up and then move on to our next wars, still primarily focusing on the 2 areas that we got claims on. By the time you tech up in every category, you will have paid off your initial burger loans, in which case I do recommend getting new burger loans, and I do recommend that you start to build buildings as well. Of course, you should start off with marketplaces. By this point, you should have a couple of centers of trade, so go ahead and build one in your capital of Florence, obviously, and in the province of Pisa that you also start with, and then if you conquered Lucca or Naples or maybe Ferrara or Mantua by now, build them over there in all the center of trade and estuary provinces. Once you wrap up the marketplaces, build a couple of churches, and when you get to admin tech 6, start spamming workshops. When you get 50 people influence, and you will get to hear if you buy indulgence for your sins, even if the Pope doesn't like you, you should open up with one of these 2 right here. They're primarily important for the early game to stop nations from being angry at us. I'm gonna go with the Sanctioned Dynasty for now. After that, I'm gonna take this, and then we can do the other ones. Once a little bit of time has passed, you will be declaring your next wars. I have waited a little longer than I need to in my game because I was just helping Austria fight Wallachia, and you can't declare on a nation in the Empire if you're in a war with the Emperor. Either way, I'm gonna be declaring on Ferrara right here, even though they're allied to Provence and Aragon, and they're guaranteed by my ally Milan, because Aragon won't join, they're in some sort of war with Castile, and France will help me out. So there we go, that's my next war, versus Ferrara. For your tier 3 government reform, I recommend consolidation of power. Now you might not think this is good because it increases the election length by 1 year, but as an Italian signoria, our elections happen every 12 years anyway, so getting this just to have it happen in 11 years isn't really worth it. That's why consolidation of power is much better, mainly because it reduces a state influence by 10% every time a re-election happens. So for your tier 3 government reform, I recommend consolidation of power. Once 1460 hits, of course, the Shadow Kingdom event will fire where the Italian nations decide to leave the HRE, and every AI nation that isn't allied to Austria will leave. Let's take a look at my game. Of course, it's only me and and Siena. So that means Siena will stay in as well. And if you're allied to Austria, you should stay as well. But if at any point Austria stops being the emperor, or you end up with your alliance with Austria broken, you should leave. Of course, once a year passes, the event will fire, and I will choose to stay in the HRE. Of course, when you get maxed out on points, which will happen quite a lot as Florence, you will need to do some deving. So simply go into your macro builder right here, go into development, sort by the cheapest, and develop the province that needs to be developed with the points that you have. In my case, I maxed out on Diplo, and the best province to dev in production is of course the cloth province, so I am gonna bump it up a couple of times, up to 10 right now. You're gonna use mill points to dev cow and grain provinces, maybe grape too. Admin points, you can pretty much do whatever you want, but you're gonna focus deving production points on the high trade good provinces such as glass, paper, iron, cloth, salt. You get the point. For your first stage ability, you should of course go with Justified Wars. And now that I've defeated Ferrara, it's time to piece them out, and when fighting them, be careful because there are two provinces right here. They're pretty high dev, so you should of course check the aggressive expansion when full annexing them. It is going to be 34.3 in my game right here, so it is quite high, and depending on how aggressive you were, you may not be able to annex them in one war based on the aggressive expansion. Luckily in my game I can, so I am going to full annex them and take all of their money. Once you defeat Ferrara, no matter when that is, whether it's your first, second, third, or fourth war, you should open up your options for other regions to expand into. And of course, when you take Ferrara, you will border Mantua. We don't have a claim on Mantua yet, so I recommend that you start spying on them. Something else that you can do at this point is if Provence still owns this, you start spying on them. We do border them via the sea tile, so after you've consolidated this region a little bit, you should start looking at your options to fight these guys as well. And there's the Shadow Kingdom event. 1 year has passed after it triggered, and like I said, I will be staying in the Empire. Our country is a natural part of the Empire. Do this if you're allied to Austria, or if there's another nation in Italy in the HRE, like Siena in my game. Once you have 2 or 3 more coastline provinces, I do recommend building up your navy a little bit as well. Unfortunately, my lightship got blown up, but I am going to build up this battle fleet, so to say, right here with a couple of galleys. These boats will help us defeat powerful naval-focused nations that we want to fight, such as Genoa and Venice. And in my game, unfortunately, Naples got PU'd by Castile now, randomly by the way, without a war. It was a succession war between Castile and Aragon. Naples got a lot of their provinces back from Aragon, but this is harder for me because Naples are now a junior partner once again. So you want to try not to let something like this happen. Ideally, you would have fought Naples by now once, maybe even twice, and you'd own a couple of provinces right here. If you did fight them right away in your second war after you fought Siena, I recommend taking these 3 provinces at the start. Of course, at a certain point, your starting awesome ruler Cosimo de' Medici will die, and you will have the option between a good admin guy, a good dip guy, and a good mill guy, or the relative as well, which is actually really good in my game right here, a 355. So of course, if there's a very good relative, a relative that's better than any of these guys, and there usually will be, definitely go with the relative. Right around 1460 is when you want to decrease autonomy a little bit in the provinces that you can, since it will have been increasing since the start. I still haven't stated up this area right here yet. I will do it after I core these 2 provinces up though. There we go, I full stated it, so now I'll decrease autonomy there as well. As we can see now, I'm maxed out on mill points and about to be maxed out on diplo points as well, so I'll develop Modena and Arezzo up a little bit because they're important manpower producing provinces pretty much, and I'll bump up Ferrara right here a couple of times in diplo points because salt is a high value trade good. I've already built marketplaces in the 3 center of trade provinces I had. Now I'm gonna put one in Ferrara as well because it is an estuary. At this point, a little bit of time has passed after I fought Ferrara. I still can't fight Siena. I've been creating favors with Austria the entirety of this campaign in order to make Austria break their alliance with Siena so I can fight them. So that's why, after wiping out the initial guys and not having the ability to fight Naples, I need to look for expansion opportunities elsewhere. I've spied on Mantua and I've spied on Provence, and we do want to go for Provence, these provinces right here, which is what I recommend for a playing tall Florence campaign, basically all of the Genoa and Venice trade nodes. Outside of that, you can do a roleplay type scenario, get some vassals or whatever, more on that later. Either way, I'm gonna declare Mantua right now, even though they're like to Genoa and Venice, because Venice won't help them out, so it's a good opportunity for me to declare. And there we go, there's my next war started. After the initial starting guys, look for expansion opportunities elsewhere. As for getting your ideas and tech up to date, I recommend going for the first 3 ideas in innovative ideas first, so you unlock this one for the minus 10% tech cost, and you unlock also the first Tuscan idea for minus 5% tech cost, which means we'll have a 15% discount when we want to get admin tech 6. And after that, once you get admin tech 6, you can get an idea or 2 more and get admin tech 7. Now, interestingly enough, over here, Mantua has unconditionally surrendered to me because they were occupied by the Ottomans for so long that I can actually piece them out without even occupying their only province right here, which is a level 3 fort. This is very strange. I've actually never seen this before, but there we go. We can do it. So that's my war with Mantua done. At this point, Milan just broke his alliance with me. Unfortunate. Now that I cored up Mantua, I will be continuing on with my wars, and at this point, it is a good opportunity for me to fight Provence. And if you can push into this area as well, go for it. Like I said, we do want this. And this is great for another reason in my campaign as well. Siena and Provence have allied each other, which means this is perfect. I can peace out Siena and make them break their alliance with Austria, and after that, fight them and finally take over this province. Like I said at the start of the video, it is the best to fight Siena first. It's just I'm unlucky in my campaign, and I'll end up fighting them last out of all the initial nations that we need to fight. Either way, here's my war declaration on Provence for the conquest of Toulon, and I'll call in France as well to help out. I've already set these provinces as provinces of interest, and France doesn't have claims on them, so they should get transferred to me. Siege down Siena, and like I said, I'll make them end their alliance with Austria, which is nice. I can finally fight them when my truce with them is up. Either way, war with Provence is also pretty much done, and in this war with Provence, I'll be taking these 3 provinces right here. This does look like a lot of aggressive expansion, but keep in mind, they're not Italian culture grouped, they're French culture grouped, and we're not even full annexing them, so it's fine. Once you clean up the initial guys, you'll start conquering a little bit more, and you do need to be a little bit more careful with aggressive expansion as well. Either way, that's my war with Provence done. I'll also take all of their money and get war reps. Something I didn't mention at the start is as Florence, we do start off with the monument right here, Santa Maria del Fiore, which gives us -1% prestige decay, a 10% advisor discount, and +1 monthly splendor. Super strong monument, especially as Florence. Later, of course, we will be upgrading it to level 3. And we'll be getting a lot more great projects as well. The one in Rome later on, the one in Naples, the one in Milan, the one in Venice, all of them are super important for us as Florence. Even the one in Avignon. Since we're getting reform progress really fast, you will get to tier 4 really quick, of course, and for your tier 4 government reform, I recommend going for a lance for the church. This will improve our opinion with the Pope by quite a lot permanently, and if they were rival to you and didn't like you through the entirety of this campaign, right now is about the point that they will start liking you. As Florence, Tuscany, and later Italy, we are going to be staying Catholic, so this is super important. We gain a Curia Powers discount and papal influence from cardinals, along with some clergy loyalty and Curia treasury contribution, which is super strong. So definitely lance for the church for your tier 4 government reform. For your second age ability, you should go with transfer subject and claims bordering claims, so we can fight nations that we don't really border. During this entire point, I'm always deving. Right now I'm maxed out on mill points, so I'll bump up once again the provinces that give us manpower. And now that I have admin tech 6, I'll once again be going for new burger loans just like that, and I'm also gonna summit the diet once again, why not? And once you have 500 ducats, which of course you will get to at a certain point of the game, you can take the mission Reform the Monte, which gives us a yearly inflation reduction plus 0.1 and -10% reduced inflation cost. And now, with admin tech 6, it's time to build workshops as well. And now my truce with Siena has expired, and I can finally fight them about 30 years after the game has started. Like I said at the start, ideally you'd fight them first, I just couldn't, and they don't even have any allies, so there we go. Finally, there's my declaration on Siena. Hopefully by this point, you will have wrapped up all of the original nations that we were supposed to fight. Lucca, Siena, Bologna, and Ferrara. And there we go. Now that my war with Siena is done, I'll be full annexing them and taking all of their money. Like I said, by this point, hopefully earlier, by around the 1470s, you will have wrapped up the original nations that we were supposed to fight. Now, after you do that, after you wrap up the original nations, if you did Ferrara last, you could look to conquering Mantua and Provence. However, if you're something like me right here, you need to look for other areas to expand in. And at this point, everyone in Italy, except for the Pope, is free game. You could go ahead and fight Venice. In my case, they're allied to Poland, so they're pretty strong. You could fight Milan, you could fight Savoy, you could fight Genoa. Take a look around, and whichever nation is the easiest to fight, except for the initial starting guys, go ahead and spy on them and go for it. In my case right here, I'll probably go for Savoy, since the ruler is excommunicated and they don't have any allies. They're just guaranteed by Milan. And of course, if someone is excommunicated, make sure to go for that immediately, because you gain a lot less aggressive expansion for the provinces that you border. In my case, this is how big Savoy is, and I only gain that CB for the province of Saluzzo right here. So this will be significantly less aggressive expansion than regular conquest. I don't border Cuneo, so I can't get that CB for that. In my game, Austria here just declared on Venice. I have claims on 2 of their provinces, and of course I will accept. But first, I'm gonna set some provinces over here as provinces of interest, basically all of them, before I accept, in hopes that Austria gives me even more. And there we go. I'll go ahead and accept. I was actually moving my troops over here to declare on Savoy, but looks like the plans have changed. If you have claims and if you participate enough in your allies' wars, they will usually give you some provinces. Let's see what happens in my case. Hopefully I don't get too much and get coalition, because that can also happen sometimes. games. After opening up with innovative ideas for your second idea group as Florence, you have two options. You can either go with trade or plutocratic. Trade, of course, is really good. All of these modifiers will help us a lot, and we do need some additional merchants as well, and it has really nice policies with idea groups that we're taking and that we're gonna take as well. Or your other option is plutocratic ideas, really strong as a republic. The mercenary stuff is great, the unrest and morale is awesome. We have a monthly reform progress right here, even more. We also gain a third merchant right here, or a fifth one depending on when you're taking it. Plus 10% goods produced is awesome. Then we have dev discount and caravan power, manpower recovery speed, and provisional trade power and burgers loyalty as a finisher. So Pluto, super strong idea group as republics, even more so as Florence. We're going to be taking both of these either way, so it's totally up to you which one of them you take second. Maybe we're not quite big enough to maximize trade right now, so that's why I slightly recommend plutocratic more for your second idea group. Whatever you want, trade or Pluto, I think Pluto. At a certain point during the game, you will get the Pazzi conspiracy event, where you have two options. You can lose stab and the estates gain some crownland, but next time we re-elect someone from the Medici family, it won't cost any Republican tradition. Or you can support the Pazzi coup, where the Pazzis come in power, we lose 2 stab and the current ruler is killed. This first option might seem a little worse due to the crownland that the estates get, but trust me, this is actually a good option right here, so definitely go for this one. Right now, even though I'm helping out Austria in this war, it will take quite a while since we're fighting a pretty big pull on Lithuania, so what I'll do while we're in this war is also declare on Savoy right here and call in France, and I'll basically let France do everything. First, of course, I'll set these two provinces as provinces of interest, and then I'll go ahead and declare with the excommunicated ruler CB for Saluzzo. And there we go. Now that I've beaten Savoy, or well, France has, I will be taking both of their provinces and all of their money. And there we go, that's another war done. When fighting bigger nations like Venice, Genoa, or maybe Milan in my case, you'll only be taking 1 to 2 provinces from them in a war. All of these northern Italian provinces are super high dev, as we can see. For your naval doctrine, if you still have other nations left to fight here, like I do in my case, Castile, Aragon, and Naples, Venice right here, then you should go with galley combat ability. However, once you take care of everyone that you want to fight over in Italy, or maybe the wider Mediterranean, if you're going for that, then you can swap to ship trade power. But for now, while you still have people to fight, free Oarsmen. For your tier 5 government reform, you have a lot of interesting options as Florence. As you know, we do have mercenary stuff, international ideas, and we gain even more from plutocratic ideas, so right now we have some very nice mercenary discounts. Over here, we also have condottieri contracts for even more mercenary cost discount and merc discipline, and then we have merc leadership, once again with a mercenary cost reduction. But even with all of these nice merc ideas, if you don't want to lean into the whole merc thing, you can go with either of these 4 initial ones right here. Organized military staff, military engineering, these 2 if you're more offensive. Then you got sustained discipline. This one isn't that good out of these 4. And then you have defensive stance right here, which is really good for playing tall, I feel like. You know, fortifying the Italian peninsula, building forts in the mountain provinces right here, being basically uninvadable, which is more of a roleplay type scenario depending on your expansion goals and opportunities. And I feel like this is pretty good for playing tall and for my goals, which are to own the entire region of Italy and the entirety of the Genoa and Venice trade nodes, so that's why I will be going with that. But you won't make a mistake with either of these 3, or if you're leaning into the whole mercenary thing, I recommend this one. And there we go, Austria ended their war with Venice. Let's see if I got something, and actually they did give me the 2 provinces that I had claims on, Ravenna and Padua, which are precisely the provinces I would have taken if I declared on Venice myself. Maybe I would have taken one more. Either way, now the nations of Aquileia and Verona have popped out, and they would be pretty easy to fight once Austria removes their guarantee over them, so I'll spy on them. This is what my aggressive expansion looks like right now. It's not that bad. We could go for a war or 2 more. At this point, I'm also going to start building up some light ships to finally start protecting trade. Even though we're way over naval force limit, it really doesn't matter too much, so I'm just going to build 10 light ships right here to protect trade in Genoa. And look at how developed every province is in production due to the developing I've been doing with Diplo points, because we will have a lot of those on hand at the beginning of the game. I'm even developing provinces that don't need to be developed in Diplo points. Once you get a third merchant, whether it's from trade or Pluto as your second idea group, put him in Valencia or Ragusa and tell him to transfer to Genoa. These guys, by the way, here they're still establishing communities. Now for my next war, I'll be declaring on Verona, a nation that popped out of Venice because they're only elected to Burgons, and this is easy pickings. These aren't extremely high def provinces, these 2, they're each 12 in my game right here, and Austria isn't guaranteeing them anymore, so I'll go for it. Take anything you can if something like this happens in your game, and it probably will after some larger nation blows up. And there we go, because of the Pazzi conspiracy, I can re-elect Paolina right here, even though she's 65, at no additional Republican tradition loss. And there we go. My war with Verona is done. I'm also helping out Austria in a different war, so that's why these occupations are there. But either way, I'm gonna full annex Verona, no risk of a coalition. There we go. Next on the chopping block are probably Aquileia and Genoa, two super easy nations to fight. Like I said, always go for the easiest nation, unless there's a specific reason to fight someone larger. Milan right here, they're not that hard to fight. And actually, Genoa is a vassal of Milan, so it looks like Aquileia is next on the chopping block. And after that, we'll push into Milan. Now that Austria has ended this war that they declare in Bohemia, and by the way, Austria is really strong in my campaign right here. It will be very annoying to fight them later for these provinces right here that I want, that are in the Venice trade node. Either way, more on that later. Now I'm going to declare an Aquileia for the conquest of Friuli. They're only allied to Trent, so this is going to be super easy. And right now, actually, Austria did not get re-elected HRE Emperor, Landshut did, and no one is even voting for Austria. And in this case, of course, if you stayed in the HRE, you will get some pretty bad effects right here, which are submission to the Emperor, lots of national rest, a stab, cost increase, and yearly prestige. So once Austria is no longer Emperor, you can try and ally the new Emperor, or you could simply leave the HRE. It's solely up to you. In my game, there's no other nation in Italy that I want to fight that's in the HRE, so what I'll do is simply leave. And once you do leave, you'll probably be able to upgrade to a kingdom, just like I can. There we go, very nice. And now that my war with Friuli is done, I'm gonna go ahead and peace out and full annex them. Perfect. Now after a little bit of chilling, I'll start my first war with my former ally Milan, which has grown quite big. They've gotten Bergamo from Venice, these provinces from Savoy, and these two from Genoa, and Genoa is their vassal. But still, they're not that strong. Myself, I could take them on, but why not do it with the help of France later? Right now, I'm gonna go ahead and get some new burgher loans, even though I still have old regular loans, and I'm gonna be upgrading some centers of trade. You should of course be doing the same. You can have as many level 3 centers of trade as you have merchants, and we're gonna have a lot of merchants later on. But for now, I'll upgrade Pisa right here, Lucca, why not? We'll do this one province in Provence, and of course I'll get to Mantua and Verona as well. Right now, since a little bit of time has passed, I'll be declaring on Milan. At this point, we're still declaring on whichever nation we can, and you should have about this number of provinces over in northern Italy as well. If you are more lucky with Naples, of course, you should have pummeled them into the ground by now. Maybe you even own a province or two over here and release Sardinia and Sicily so you can reconquer their cores. Either way, if you fought Naples, you probably own all of this by now, or almost all of it. More on that later, and on possible opportunities like this. For now, I'll be declaring on Milan for Parma and calling in France. Right now, I just finished plutocratic ideas, and I got the policy for even more advisor discounts. And if we go into our modifiers right here, we can see our advisor cost right now, without inflation, would be 40%. Another 15% from the estate privileges, and that's a 55% advisor cost discount. Really strong. Later, of course, we're going to be getting even more. And now that the war with Milan is pretty much done, I'm going to be taking these provinces right here. It says there's a risk of a coalition, but it won't really be because I have truces with Milan and Venice and the Pope, so it can't form. Even though this is a little more aggressive now, I do need to connect my provinces right here, and I'll also get war reps and all of their money. And that's my war with Milan done. After you finally take the province of Parma, you will be able to take the mission Tuscan Birthright, which gives you a permaclaim on Lombardy and the Po Valley. If you're a kingdom, you'll be able to take the mission Dreams of Grandeur for some points. Now, aggressive expansion is pretty high, so we do need to do quite a bit of chilling before we continue with our conquest. Right now, my loans have been paid off. I can summon the Diet, do another agenda, seize land once again, and get new burgher loans, which is something you want to do all the time. And right now, I'll continue to upgrade the centers of trade that I haven't earlier. I can do Mantua right here, there's Verona, and first I'll state up Liguria as well, and bump up Genoa too. There we go, every center of trade is at level 2, and we can do some more marketplaces in the provinces that give us more than 2 trade power. Once there's only a couple of nations left in Italy, you can tell these guys to maximize profit over here. And in fact, I'm going to remove the guy collecting in Genoa and tell him to transfer from Alexandria. And by the way, trade isn't as complicated as everyone makes it out to be. How do you know where you make more money? How do you know how you should rearrange your merchants? It's simple. Right now, one guy is transferring from Valencia to Genoa, the other guy is collecting in Venice, and the third guy is transferring from Alexandria to Genoa. Let's see, I'm making 27.76 ducats a month right now by transferring from Alexandria to Genoa. What happens if I collect in Genoa? I make more money like this, so that's how I'm actually going to leave the merchants. And by around the time colonialism comes around, your game should look a little something like this. Basically, we start off as Florence, and like I said at the start and many times after that, your ideal opening war would be versus Siena. If you had taken Siena, then you should have immediately started spying on Aragon or Naples, depending on if they were free, and your second war should have been immediately versus Naples while they still had no allies. And after that, you could have started pushing into Naples, and by this point, you fought them 2 or 3 times, or even vassalized them so that you can reconquer their cores from Aragon, which in my game they've gotten. However, if you were like me, not that lucky, then your first war wasn't versus Siena and it was versus some other nation, and if you couldn't fight Naples at all, like I couldn't, you should have continued to push in the initial starting nations that I mentioned, Lucca, Bologna, and Ferrara, and of course later Siena. Maybe Naples is still independent in your game, maybe they didn't get repeated by Castile or Aragon or France, and maybe you could fight them again later on in the game. But after you take care of the initial starting nations, you should have spied on Mantua and on Provence if they were still here and expanded into them, and after you wrap the starting guys up in these two nations, this is just a possibility by the way, not something you strictly need to do, just like with Naples. So these two areas are just bonus expansion areas, not something you need to follow along. But after you wrap that up, then it's pretty much free game, and you should continue to push on into Savoy, Saluzzo, Montferrat, Genoa, Milan, and Venice, basically the other nations that are left over aside from the initial starting nations. Pretty much after we do this first mission right here, we're not really following along with our mission tree because Milan is one of our starting allies, and depending on when you broke your alliance with them, that's when you're going to conquer Parma. So we're a little faster than our mission tree tells us right here to conquer into Lombardy and the Po Valley. After that, we've already expanded in different regions and we're pretty much ahead of our mission tree. But after this point, you will continue to expand in the same directions we've already been expanding in. Like I said, for a tall Florence / Tuscany / Italy game, what you want to focus on is the region of Italy right here, along with these two areas that are in the Venice and Genoa trade nodes. That's what I would do. After that, expansion in the Ragusa and Valencia trade node would come through vassals, maybe later on in the game even client states and stuff like that. And maybe you could expand into here as well, once again through vassals. It's totally up to you what you do. Of course, that is what I would do for a playing tall-ish campaign. Maybe way later on in the game, I would conquer this as well. But you'll continue to push into the northern Italian guys, wipe them all out. If you're still pushing into Naples, continue to do it. If you got Naples as a vassal, or maybe Sicily or Sardinia, you gotta reconquer their course from Aragon or whoever it is. And later on, when you wipe out everyone else over here and the Pope is the only nation that's left, you could of course fight them as well. And when you take Rome, of course, you are going to be forming Italy too. So the Pope is the last nation that you're going to fight. Maintain good relations with them all throughout. As you can see, I can even ally them now, even though we started off rivaled. So don't get too involved with them in a military sense. If you're fighting them, just take money and war reps, don't take any land from them. Speaking of forming nations, of course, you will form Tuscany. This is just a cosmetic name change, and it does give you prestige and monthly autonomy change. But of course, later on, when you conquer all the necessary provinces to form Italy, you will form Italy as well. If you're planning on continuing or playing tall campaign, do not take Italian ideas. However, if you're planning on blobbing a whole lot, definitely do take Italian ideas, because Tuscan ideas are better for playing tall, Italian ideas are better for expansion. Of course, during this point, expanding militarily and through conquest isn't the only thing that we've been doing, and it isn't the only thing that you are going to be doing later on. As Florence / Tuscany / Italy later on, we're a super rich nation, and you should have been developing your country through dev, of course, through bumping up provinces, through building the right buildings in the right provinces, upgrading centers of trade, building boats and stuff like that. And by this point, this is what I have built, and this is what you sort of should have been building as well. As you can see, I've got marketplaces not only in the center of trade provinces, of course those are the most important ones, but I've also built them in provinces I've devved up quite a lot in production, and those provinces obviously give me more than 2 trade power, so that's why I've built marketplaces there as well. As we can see, Bologna right here gives me 1.9, and I'll give you an example. If I develop it a bit more over here in dip, it of course gives me 230 now, which means it is warranted that I build a marketplace there as well. So build them in all the center of trade and estuary provinces, and in provinces you develop quite a lot with diplo points. As you can see, I've built a bunch of workshops in the high value trade good provinces and in the provinces that I've developed, once again in dip, a bunch of army buildings in the wheat and livestock provinces and stuff like that, a lot of churches almost everywhere. Boom, there's 2 more just like that. And later on, of course, you will continue to build manufactories, first in the high value trade good provinces and then everywhere else. I pretty much build a manufactory in every province that gives me more than 0.04 ducats a month. And of course, in provinces that give me less but have a high value trade good, this of course is planning for the future. You should have upgraded all the centers of trade that you own up to tier 2 by now. Maybe if you had more cash than me, if you got war ups from big nations and stuff like that, you've upgraded 1 or 2 provinces to level 3. It is definitely possible by this point. This is what my army is looking like right now, 24/47, pretty much up to combat with. And I have a boat stack right here with 15 galleys and 10 transports to help me beat up some of the nations right here. And I have a light ship fleet protecting trade in Genoa. I'll also put 1 in Venice later on, 1 in Valencia, 1 in Ragusa. You know how it goes. We will keep building those boats. Later on, once you take care of the entire region of Italy and the Genoa and Venice trade nodes, you might want to expand it in other regions, but if you're playing tallish, this might be done through vassals. There are a bunch of nations that we can release here when you fight France. And of course, be careful on which side you fight in first. You will have to fight Austria for this right here. You will have to fight maybe France for this right here. So use one of them or someone else like Castile or Poland or someone like that to help you beat those guys up. There's a bunch of nations you can release in Ragusa or in Valencia. You've got Catalonia, Valencia, Toulouse right here, a bunch of nations in the Balkans, Croatia, Dalmatia, Serbia, Albania, maybe even Byzantium. You could own this entire region yourself and then have everything else through vassals. Pretty much the choice is up to you, but our idea groups help us a lot in wanting to play tall. Speaking of idea groups, we did open up with innovative ideas with the best idea group you can open up with as Florence. Sure, some people don't think it's that good, but why not go with it? When else do you take it? And it does help us out quite a lot. As we can see, we're almost at 100 innovativeness over here. So innovative and Pluto for your first two idea groups, these help us out a lot in development and making money, getting cheap advisors, monarch point generation. For your third idea group, you could honestly go with a diplomatic one, such as trade or court ideas that we need to take, or another admin idea group such as economic or infrastructure. Once again, these are two that we are going to take. And then for your third one, maybe you could go for another mill one if you think you need it, depending on your conquest. But if you do go for a second mill idea group, then I do recommend quality. This will help our army and our boats as well, or even quantity, since we'll be super rich and we'll be able to build a much more massive army than our force limit will permit us. And of course, quantity has some really amazing policies with other idea groups that we're going to take. So it's pretty much up to you what other idea groups that you take, but for the playing tall purposes, after innovative and Pluto, you should go with economic infrastructure and trade and court from admin and diplo ideas, and then quantity or quality for mill, and then you can finish off with diplo as well. So those are the ones that you do need to get. Of course, later on, you will be getting a lot more great projects, like I said earlier, and you should build them all to tier 3. Of course, the ones that are located over in Italy. This one right here helps us out a lot with advisor discounts, and that helps us massively with playing tall, monarch point generation. The one in Rome is great right here, idea discount, even more playing tall stuff, and some nice papal bonuses. The one in Naples is good for reform progress growth. It'll help you get through those tiers faster, and the gov cap is excellent as well. The one in Milan is probably the weakest one over in Italy, but that +2 yearly papal influence for the third one is really good, since we'll be staying Catholic the entirety of the campaign. And the Doge's Palace in Venice is once again excellent for republics. Definitely go ahead and build that one up. And the Palace of the Popes over in Avignon helps us once again with papal thingies. For your tier 6 government reform, of course, you could become a monarchy, but if you're planning on playing tall for the entirety of the campaign, I actually recommend that you do stay a republic. Sure, you won't have as much absolutism, but you don't really need it since you won't be conquering. However, if you do plan on blabbing out a whole lot, you could become a monarchy later down the line in about 100 to 150 years, so there's still no need to seize executive power for tier 6. Instead, I recommend going with the presidential system. For tier 7, I recommend going for provincial governments or the administrative divisions. For tier 8, all of them are really good as a trade-focused playing tall nation in the Mediterranean. You could empower the burghers for trade efficiency, global trade power. You could also embrace the economic theory for yearly inflation reduction and interest per annum. Or you could go with this one right here for dev discount and goods produced if by that point you've taken economic or infrastructure ideas. For tier 9, you should broaden executive powers. For tier 10, you could go with either of these three. All of them give you +1 possible policies in each department, so whatever you have for policies, take one for those. For tier 11, I recommend citizenry. For tier 12, I recommend appointment by committee. And for tier 13, I recommend that you strengthen executive powers. And like I said, around the time colonialism comes around, your game should look a little something like this. Let me know in the comments below what's the next nation that I should do a guide on. If you want to watch me do stuff like this live, you can follow me on twitch.tv/TheRedHawkLive. And if you want to catch up on stuff from over there, you can subscribe to the second channel. Link is in the description. If you enjoyed this video, don't hesitate to leave a like. It really helps out a lot. And if you like the content and want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of them. And you can become a member today and join the Discord. The link is in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time with another EU4 video.